Welcome to the Dynasty Dugout Show, a podcast covering all things minor league baseball. Get a front row seat to the action with everything you need to know about the future stars of Major League Baseball. And now, here's your host, Chris Clegg.
It's the Dynasty Dugout Show. Today, we're talking first base prospects. Let's get into it. So last week, we discussed the top catchers in the minor leagues. We also discussed some Red Sox top prospects with Ian Cundall. Go check that out. That was a awesome and very popular episode. We're going to have some more team-by-team discussions as well. But today, we are diving into the world of all things first base prospects. It's an interesting position. The first base side of things puts a lot of pressure on bats, and there's such a high threshold to hit. Look at all the failed former top first base prospects over the years, and then look at the crop now. It's a pretty tough bar to climb when you look back and you think about the Spencer Torkelsons, you think about the Andrew Vaughns, all these guys that were first base only and drafted high, only to ultimately not reach their potential. I know Torkelson's had a good season, Andrew Vaughn's had a couple of good seasons, but if you look at the list year over year, it's a little bit underwhelming. So to start, as I was thinking about this, let's go to MLB Pipeline's rankings, because you can sort by their first base ranks year over year or the positional rankings, and I'm going to do first base. We can just go back a little bit, and you can kind of see why this position is tough on prospects. We'll go back to 2018. Pipeline's top 5 were Brendan McKay, who we know eventually converted to pitcher, still prospect eligible here in 2025, has not made it, unfortunately, due to injuries. Ryan McMahon, okay, that's fine. Pavin Smith, Nick Prado, and Bobby Bradley. So that was 2018. 2019, top first base prospects for Pipeline. Pete Alonso, all right, that one worked. That's pretty good. Evan White, dud. Nate Lowe, Nathaniel Lowe. I mean, yeah, but he's bounced around. He's had a couple of good seasons here and there. Brenton Rooker was solid, and Brennan McKay. 2020, Andrew Vaughn, definitely hasn't reached the potential of what many thought when he was drafted and ranked. Evan White, Tristan Casas, Ryan Mountcastle, and Seth Beer. Casas has had his moments. He's still looking like a really solid possible first baseman. Mountcastle's been fine. 2021, Vaughn, Casas, Aaron Sabato, Seth Beer, and Lewin Diaz. 2022, Spencer Torkelson, Tristan Casas, Nick Prado, Dustin Harris, and Juan Yepez. 2023 is not as relevant because, again, a lot of these guys haven't really had a chance to put themselves in situations, but first base position is tough. You have to be exceptional in the field. We know that naturally first basemen aren't going to be as good in the field, but if you're a good glove, it helps, but you also have to hit. If you don't hit, you don't have a glove, then it doesn't matter. And for a lot of these first base prospects over the years, they just haven't hit like they expected. A lot of the failed profiles are also power-only profiles that didn't have much of a hit tool that we just kind of hoped would evolve. So that's also a bit of an issue in and of itself, because a lot of the top first base prospects we're going to look at today have kind of questionable hit tools. They may have power. They may have some traits that are pretty interesting. But when you look at the overall just makeup of the player, do they have the tools to make it if the power doesn't come along? And that'll be kind of interesting to follow. Let's start at the top. Samuel Basallo is technically my top first baseman, but he's catcher first base. If you want to listen to more on him, go back to the catcher episode. I really hit on him there. So let's dive in on Bryce Eldridge. Eldridge had an awesome year, former two-way guy drafted in 2023. He reached AAA by the end of the 2024 season. Eldridge had an awesome season. He moved from outfield to first base. He's a good athlete. He moves well, and he hits the ball incredibly hard. He put up an impressive slash of 293, 374, 516, had 23 homers, 27 doubles, and 2 triples as a 19-year-old, all while moving from single A all the way to AAA. And I know at the end of the day, he was moved to AAA just to get more reps. Honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if he started back in AA this year. Eldridge made strides with the contact month over month, which was notable. That was kind of a question mark, and it still is a bit of a question mark. But let's look at these numbers month by month. So here's Eldridge's contact and strikeout rates by month. April, 60.5% contact, 29% K. May, 70.5% contact, 27.5% K. June, 73.7% contact, 22% strikeout. July, had a little bit of a dip, 61.6% contact, 33.3% strikeout. August, 73% contact, 20% strikeout. September, 70.6% contact and 24% K. So while July had us down, mostly it was on the up for Eldridge. For somebody who hits the ball this hard, who's also 6'7" and has long levers, those contact rates will play. We're talking about a ninth percentile exit velocity of 107 miles an hour. I mean, he put the ball in the air north of 60% of the time. So naturally, when you hit the ball hard and you hit it in the air, it's going to leave the yard. And that's exactly what Bryce Eldridge did. He's aggressive on pitches in the zone. He knows and reads pitches well. He has a better than average chase rate at 26%. And so while the zone contact rate's like average, I think it's better because of how often he is swinging in the zone and jumping on those pitches. It's a smooth swing. The power comes naturally. There's been a lot of questions, when does Eldridge debut? I think people are hoping that given that he reached AAA and then went to the AFL last year, that he's going to be up soon. I don't think that's the case. I think Eldridge is a late season call-up. I think that's because they want to keep him prospect eligible for 2026. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on this and they bring him up mid-season, but I would guess that he's AA for the first couple of months and then AAA for several months before getting a late August, September cup of coffee. That's kind of my read on Eldridge. But pure first base prospects, he's at the top. I mean, that power is undeniable. His age to level performance, pretty impressive. So that obviously stands out too. So Bryce Eldridge is going to be an interesting player to watch. This is this guy, Nick Kurtz. Kurtz is a big 6'5", 235 first baseman, drafted last year from Wake Forest. I got to see him in the AFL. He's a better athlete than you might expect looking at his frame. It's an interesting kind of setup at the plate, funky kind of leg lift, but Kurtz is a safe first baseman from the standpoint of he makes a lot of contact and he hits the ball incredibly hard. The power numbers didn't dip at all after he moved up from college to pro ball, which is pretty usually happens given from a metal bat to a wood bat, but we didn't see that with Kurtz. The exit velocity stuck. They were incredible. In college, he had a 111 mile an hour ninth percentile exit velocity. That was literally 100th percentile among all college hitters. You see him in pro ball. Guess what? The numbers were really good. 109 with wood. That's like upper tier. Like that was one of the top marks in pro baseball too. I know it's a smaller sample after the draft, but Kurtz continued to hit the ball hard in the AFL. The contact rates are also very impressive. And his pitch recognition and plate discipline, top of the scale. So we're looking at somebody that's going to put a lot of balls in play, hit for power, and get on base at a high clip, all while playing a decent first base. I think Kurtz is primed to spend half the season with the Athletics. You look at how they handled Jacob Wilson last year. They brought him up around, I think, late June, early July, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's a similar path that Kurtz will follow. His biggest knock is health. He's had 4 injuries over the last 2 years. So that's something to watch with Nick Kurtz. Can he stay healthy? If he can, then I think there's pretty substantial talent here that we're looking at with Nick Kurtz with that bat. You watch him and you may think this isn't a good athlete. He's actually a really good athlete for his size. I think Kurtz is a safer bet at first base, and he should be really good for a long time. He's going to be primed to hit being in that Sacramento ballpark. He's going to put up some big numbers. I think he's up pretty soon with the Athletics. I'm excited to see what Nick Kurtz does. Jac Caglianone. Caglianone's an interesting player. He's probably the most divisive player out of last year's first-year player draft. The power is undeniable. Some of the best power in the game, right? Like, from all levels. I think Cags has some of the best power. He hit a ball over 121 miles an hour last year. 121.7 max EV is absurd. He continued to hit with wood. He hit some in the AFL that I saw that were just insane. I mean, the power is off the charts here, and there's no denying that. I've talked to some people who have worked pretty closely with him. They speak very highly of his work ethic and how he really strives to improve. Now, Jac's interesting because everybody knocks the hit tool, and the hit tool is not the issue. He's just hyper-aggressive. Caglianone chases a ton out of the zone. He put up chase rates north of 40% for 2 straight years at Florida in college, and he hit pro ball, and guess what? He chased a 40% clip again. Now, there was an interesting trend in the AFL because the first 3 weeks in the AFL, chase rate was north of 40%. The last 3 weeks, it dropped to 33%. This will be a trend to watch pretty closely. When Cags connects, he does damage. The good news is he connects pretty often. He ran an end zone contact rate north of 90% in college. The contact rates are not an issue at all. It's just that he's aggressive and chases a little bit. So with Cags, you know what you're getting. You're getting a powerful, powerful bat who hits the ball insanely hard. There's some chase, there's aggressiveness. Does it affect him? Probably. I'd like to see that cleaned up a bit, but contact is not an issue with Jac Caglianone. So we had 2 first-year player guys right out of the gate. This next guy's a very polarizing player, and he wasn't. People were very high on Xavier Isaac of the Tampa Bay Rays, and I've seen Isaac a lot. Like, I've seen a ton of Xavier Isaac over the years, from his days in Charleston in 2023 to with Bowling Green, a lot in the high A, and then even the AFL. They experiment with him in right field. That's just not going to happen. Like, it's Jordan Walker, but worse in right. It's not going to happen for Isaac. He's a first baseman. The power's undeniable. I think we know that. I mean, 20-year-old posting a 108 mile an hour ninth percentile exit velocity is top of the scale power, hard hit rate north of 50%, and a max EV of 114. Xavier Isaac can hit for power. There's no denying that. Big frame. He's actually pretty athletic for his size. Look at him compared to when he was drafted versus now. His body's been changed a lot, and he's a good athlete. He runs pretty well. You know, I've got some clock times on him home to first and home to third. He's had a couple triples when I've seen him in person, and he runs pretty well for his size. Now, here's the concern. It's contact. The contact rates dipped hard in 2024 to the point where he had an overall contact rate south of 60% and an end zone contact rate of 68%. I'm a little bit concerned about the ability to make contact. There's also pretty drastic splits during the 2024 season because he was injured. He had a wrist injury. I think we could point and say that affected the contact, but also when I look at the power numbers, I also look at it and say, okay, the wrist clearly didn't affect his ability to hit for power because he put up some 112s and 113s after the wrist injury. So to me, I look at it and say, I'm not really sure that's the case with Xavier Isaac. He struggled mightily with contact in the AFL too, where pitching's not all that great, so it's something to watch out for. 35 home runs could be a realistic outcome for Xavier Isaac. There's no denying that, but he's got to make enough contact. We'll see what that looks like when he comes back in 2025. He'll likely go back to AA. He's still young. He's still got plenty of time. Isaac's interesting. I am definitely concerned with his contact rates. But his teammate, Tre Morgan, is like the total opposite kind of player. Tre Morgan is a gold glove first baseman. And when I tell you that Tre Morgan is a defensive wizard, and you should take him seriously when I say he's a gold glove first baseman, just go watch some highlights. Just type in Tre Morgan defense. And you'll find some absolutely incredible highlights of Tre Morgan playing first. They also experiment with him in left field in the AFL, and I thought he looked pretty good. He has some good routes. I think he misread probably one ball of like some 8 to 10 that I saw hit to him when he was in left. I thought he looked all right there. Now, it's the polar opposite of Isaac. The power is not there. I know people want to read into the 10 home runs, 36 extra base hits. He slugged 43. There's not power. For somebody that's his age coming out of college, there's not any power. He had a 9th percentile exit velocity of 101.5, which is about 2 miles an hour below MLB average. You got to realize that there's some very hitter-friendly parks in the South, in High A, so the South Atlantic League. Just is what it is. I set on a couple of his home runs live. One was in Asheville, and it's funny because I've got the video. The right field fence is 290. It's tall, but it's 290 feet. And Morgan hit a pop-up, and he clearly thought it was just a routine fly-out, just watching his like initial reaction like off the bat. And it just dropped over the wall because it's 290 feet. And he had several in Greenville that I saw. It's a very hitter-friendly environment as well. All that to say, Morgan's contact rates are near elite. He had a 81% overall contact rate, Watch his approach with 2 strikes. I'll pop it on the YouTube video if you're watching, because it's awesome to see. When there's 2 strikes in the count, he chokes up the bat as far as he can, and he gets about as wide of a stance as possible. Like, he would be doing a split if he got much wider. But Morgan made contact on 90% of pitches with 2 strikes that he swung at last year. So his approach works. He is not going to strike out. This is a player that has walked more than he has struck out in his pro career. Gold Glove caliber first baseman, paired with those contact skills, I don't really care as much about the power because this is going to be a major leaguer. For sure. This is a valuable asset. Morgan and Isaac I've waffled on back and forth because they're polar opposite players. What's more valuable? I don't know, but I've got them very close in my rankings, and I'm very curious how this shakes out. But Morgan is a really, really unique player, especially at the first base position. Diving into our next first baseman, which I may be a little higher on than most at this point, is Josue Briceño, the Detroit Tigers. Now, Briceño was near top 100 for me after spring training when I saw him. And then he goes to the Florida State League, single A, which is hard to hit. He put up some absurd underlying data. Then he was hurt, so he missed most of the year. He came back, went to the AFL. I mean, he was by and far the best hitter in the AFL with a pretty impressive group. You look, he was 19 all year. He turned 20, I think, the beginning of the AFL. But what he did was stellar. In the regular season, we're looking at a 9th percentile exit velocity of 104 miles an hour, which is a strong mark for a 19-year-old. The power's there. Average EV of 90 miles an hour. He put up some big EVs in the AFL as well. Barrel rates, very good. But Briceño is also a big boy with contact skills. I get it with single A, but he ran an 83% contact rate with an 89% end zone. Chase rate, 23%. That's a pretty well-rounded combo for a 19-year-old first baseman. We look at the data. You look at him, he's a slow runner. He's a bit clunky, but the power's there. The skills are there. The contact's there. He's up to like 6'5" now. He won't be catching anymore moving forward. It's a first base only profile, but Josue Briceño's bat is legit. Top 100 for me, and I think it should be top 100 for most at this point. I'm actually a little surprised that most haven't moved him up, just given the fact that a lot of people put a lot of stock into AFL performance. His AFL performance was incredible, but the data in single A as a 19-year-old also backs this. Very, very impressive player. You can find some, hopefully you saw some of that film if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening in podcast form, go subscribe to the YouTube for me. I'm trying to grow that platform and do more video-driven content. There's a lot of good stuff there. There's exclusive player video. I went to 70 live games last year, and I've got a ton of prospect video from the complex, from single A to high A, double A, and triple A. Actually, double A I lied about because there's no double A near me. But I've got triple A, I've got high A, and I've got single A. And I went to the complex, ton of AFL video as well. So go check that out and subscribe to Dynasty Dugout. Would very much appreciate your support. Next player on the list, Ralphy Velazquez. Another player who was a catcher at one point. The Guardians moved him off pretty quick after the draft. First base only profile. Smooth, compact swing from the left side, but a ton of power in a 6'3", 215-pound frame. Unfortunately, the week that I had Lynchburg this year, Velazquez was hurt or sick. I never got good confirmation he didn't play. So unfortunately, I have no Ralphie video to put here with the YouTube. But Ralphie, I did see him. I saw him there existing. He's a really good frame. And the video you can go watch is pretty impressive on him. Even though I didn't get to see him in person, the stat line didn't jump off the page last year. He slashed 243, 362, 414. He had 10 home runs, 32 extra base hits in 82 games. It's effortless power. It's respectable contact rates, actually. The end zone contact rate was north of 80%, the overall at 74%. Pretty respectable for a power bat that was his age. And he had exit velocities up to 112 miles per hour. That's a standout for a 19-year-old for sure, especially somebody that will still be 19 on opening day 2025. So very interesting prospect in Ralphie Velazquez. Cleveland's system is deep. I think that he could continue to move up these first base ranks. I wouldn't be shocked if I had him above Xavier Isaac pretty soon, to be honest with you. So Ralphie Velazquez is certainly somebody to watch out for. Keep going down the list. Ryan Clifford. Now, this is a weird one, too. Clifford's kind of a tweener. He's played some outfield, first base. There's power. And again, this goes to show you how little surface stats matter in minor league baseball because park factors are incredibly weird, and there's so many factors that go into this whole thing. I can rant on that all day. But look at Ryan Clifford. He had a pretty interesting splits where he was very bad before he bumped to Double-A. I mean, he was abysmal in high A to begin the year because Brooklyn is not a good place to hit. One, early in the season, it's cold and the wind blows in all the time in Brooklyn. He put up a 216, 412, 304 slash. 304 slug for a power bat, not good at all. Just one home run over that span. Everybody was like, Ryan Clifford's done, blah, blah, blah. Brooklyn's a tough place to hit. If you're looking at surface numbers, put the context with it. He moved to Double-A. He had 18 home runs and had 21 doubles in 98 games, and he slashed 228, 372, 421. I mean, again, the average wasn't great. That's a little bit concerning. The contact rate set around 69%, so it's a little lower than I like to see, but the power is good. He had a ball up to 113 miles an hour. He had several over 110. He doesn't chase at all, which is a positive too, and he walked at a 18% clip. Like, that's a little high, but that still shows a really, really good plate discipline and approach here. Clifford's interesting. He could go several ways this year, I think. He could bump up this list if he cleans up the contact a little bit. I also wouldn't be shocked if he fell down the list some. So Clifford's an interesting one to watch out for. I mean, I think that this is a major league bat. I believe the power's there. I mean, you look at the EVs, they're definitely there. But can he hit enough? That's still to be determined. So we'll see with Ryan Clifford. I'm more conflicted on him than a lot of these first basemen, to be honest. I've also seen him. You can look at some of the video in the YouTube, and I don't know. I'm just kind of split on what I think of Clifford. All right, if you really want to get divisive, though, this player is probably the most polarizing player. I said Jack was. I bet it's this guy, Deyvison De Los Santos. De Los Santos has had 3 teams in the last year, selected in the Rule 5 draft by the Guardians. He was ultimately sent back to Arizona, who then traded him to Miami. De Los Santos is interesting. The surface numbers, if you look at them, you think might be one of the best prospects in the game. 294, 343, 571, 40 home runs, and 67 extra base hits. I mean, legitimately, that was one of the most impressive minor league performances in 2024. So why is he so low down on my first base list? Well, there's some major flaws in this profile. 1, contact rates. 2, chase. We talked about chase rates with Jac Caglianone. He at least makes up for it with contact. That's the difference. Caglianone running a 90% in-zone contact rate with a high chase rate, okay, it's negated some. Now, Deyvison's a lot different because he chased at a 45% clip, which was one of the worst marks in the minors, but he also ran really bad contact rates, 65% overall and 77% in-zone. Those are not good. That's very concerning, in my opinion. Now, Deyvison was young, 20 years old, be 21 on opening day, 2025, so he's still really young. There's certainly time to clean that up. The power's undeniable. 109 mile an hour 9th percentile, that's serious juice. Up there with several of those others we had. That's better power than Xavier Isaac. 116 max, pretty absurd. I mean, there are ultimately questions, though. Can Deyvison De Los Santos make enough contact, and can he clean up his approach enough? Because the reality is, to me, and I don't do player comps often, but this one screams Franmil Reyes. Obviously, Franmil played outfield, he DH, but Franmil Reyes ran into a 30 home run season in the majors. The power was there. But he also was out of the league pretty quick. The profile for Deyvison De Los Santos is very reminiscent of that of Franmil Reyes coming up. And that's my concern. There are definitely flaws. He's young. Can he clean it up? Absolutely. But it's a wait-and-see approach for me. I think that this profile is more replaceable. You can find guys with juice and no contact and approach. I mean, those are just easier profiles to find. But if Deyvison comes out and he cleans up the approach early in the season in AAA, he's making enough contact, then all of a sudden, like, we're looking at a viable major league first baseman with game-changing power. I don't have any doubts about that. I mean, he hit 40 last year. He could run to 40 in the major leagues. There's legit power. All about the contact. Flip the script a little bit because this guy is the polar opposite of that, and that's CJ Kayfus of the Cleveland Guardians. Kayfus was dominant in 2024. He was really good in high A, slowed down a bit in double A, but he still finished the year with a 291, 393, 511 slash. The power's not off the charts. I mean, Kayfus puts up respectable exit velocities. They're slightly below average, but he hits the ball at ideal angles, he gets to the pull side, and he hits in the air. So that's great optimization. 4 home runs, even if you don't hit the ball incredibly hard. That's CJ Kayfus' profile. He also makes a ton of contact. The strikeout rate did balloon a little bit in double A, which I'm watching jump from 18% high to 28% in double A, so that's certainly something to keep an eye out on. The contact rate in high A, 78%, 72% in double A, but the chase rate was good, just 25% on the year, so a good approach. I'd say above average or better contact, and optimal launch angles for Kayfus, so he can get to some more home runs than you might expect, even without the great EVs. He'll probably be in AAA. You'll probably be underwhelmed when you see the public StatCast data of exit velocities at least. But know that Kayfus' profile is that where he can, I'll use the terms of Aram Layton, outslug the EVs, which I think is a great term, by the way. It's just the reality of who he is because he squares it up, he puts it in the air, he gets to the pull side, he's going to get to home runs. So the exit velocities matter a little less with Kayfus. But an interesting player nonetheless. I want to stick with the Cleveland Guardians for this first base prospect because this is a guy I think has the potential to skyrocket in 2025, and that's Luis Merejo Jr. Now, Merejo was a data darling in 2023 in the DSL. He put up some absurd exit velocities and StatCast data in the DSL, which piqued my interest. Anytime you see that, I'm like, okay, DSL surface numbers, throw them out the window. But when you see guys putting up pretty eye-popping exit velos or outlier for their age, no, I'm interested. He did that as well in 2024 in the complex and single A. I mean, you look at what he did between complex and single A, /263, 300, 439. Okay, Chris, we're not really wowed by that. He had 7 home runs, 29 extra base hits in 77 games. All right, whatever. He's aggressive, swings a lot, but he's hyper-aggressive in the zone and not out of the zone. 22% chase rate for his age, 18-year-old, really good. He's still going to be 18 on opening day 2025, by the way. So very young, a 9th percentile exit velocity of 106. For an 18-year-old, that's elite. I mean, legit. That's like near 100th percentile for an 18-year-old. So the power with Merejo is off the charts. And the contact is good enough. The plate discipline, really good. I mean, if these numbers stick in 2025, I dare say that Luis Merejo Jr. is a top 5 first base prospect because that power is off the charts, even if he just maintains those exit velocities in 2025. I mean, the potential's through the roof. So I'm really curious to see what Luis Merejo becomes. So it's something to watch pretty closely here. Mike Boeve is a unique first baseman, Milwaukee Brewers. A second round, 2023, he got off to probably the hottest start of any draftee right out of the gate in 2023. He has a strong build. He's 6'2", 210. And the contact, like this is a CJ Kayfus-esque profile where the contact rates are really, really good. 85% overall, that's substantial. Doesn't swing and miss on breaking balls often at all. Very low chase rate, 12% walk rate. He's already put up exit velocities north of 110, and his 9th percentile exit velocity this year was right around MLB average. So when you combine those skills, I think you've got a pretty interesting prospect here with Mike Boeve, who really just doesn't get all that much love when he really should. So Milwaukee Brewers, Mike Boeve, it's a 20 home run bat, I think, with impressive contact skills. Another one who he's very direct to the ball, very short to the ball, but it works. And the launch angles are optimal. He's very optimized already, so it's going to play. On the flip side, we've got Tyler Black with the Brewers, and people are probably like, what's going on with him? Like, is he ever going to play? I'm highly concerned about Tyler Black, and I've never been high on him. And it's not to try to flaunt or anything, but like when everybody was going crazy over Tyler Black and his surface numbers, I wasn't it. I mean, it's a weird profile for one because he doesn't really have a position for one, and he doesn't really have the juice to be a DH either. It's a really good contact profile. It's a very solid plate approach, very low chase rate, but I don't really see the power there. You know, he hit 14 home runs last year in AAA. He had 20 stolen bases. I mean, the exit velocities are bad. I mean, just is what it is. They're not good at all for his age. He was about 2 miles an hour below MLB average for a 9th percentile. And he had an average EV of 85.7, which among first basemen would be like one of the worst in the league. So, I mean, he hits the ball in the air often enough to get to like 15 home runs, but I don't know. I'm not really sure how this profile fits in, and I'm a little bit worried about it, if I'm being honest with you. A couple sleepers here. Jonathon Long of the Chicago Cubs. Long's data was really good during the season, and he really popped off to me in the AFL. You know, play on words here, but his swing does get a bit long at times, but there is power. He hit 17 home runs, had 21 doubles, and slashed 283, 391, 461. Doing high AA last year. Really good EVs. He had a 105 9th percentile, which is solid. He pulls the ball in the air at a high rate. He's also very solid plate approach. 23% chase, 14% walk rate. Some really good numbers from a 22-year-old Jonathon Long, Chicago Cubs. Keep an eye on him. He may be moving towards Chicago, the one you see, pretty quick. Will Simpson, another sleeper, went to the Tampa Bay Rays, which always intrigues me when a deal's made like this. Oh, here he's with the Athletics. He was traded to the Rays in the Jeffrey Springs deal. Simpson's pretty fascinating. He had a big season on the surface. He had 18 home runs, 53 extra base hits, and a 282, 378, 482 slash line. The power's there. I mean, it's a high chase rate. It's hyper-aggressiveness, but there is plenty of juice. He hits the ball in the air often at 67% air rate, so that's a very high air rate. He hits the ball hard. He looks to me like a 20, 25 home run bat. There's also negatives of going to Tampa Bay because Platoon City, I'm afraid that might be the case here. And how does he find time in this org that's really the deepest org for minor leaguers in the game? Like, they have 50 prospects that are legit. And so Simpson is still a bit of a sleeper. But watch out for that name and this name, who was popular at once, all of a sudden not all that popular, and that's Abimelec Ortiz of the Texas Rangers. Ortiz was very popular in 2023. He was a standout, and he struggled. He struggled in 2024 in AA, but he really picked it up to end the year. Something changed around the All-Star break for Abimelec Ortiz, and it was really, I think, a lot luck-driven because he ran a 218 BABIP last year. So through the first 67 games, here's the numbers. 183, 259, 306, 5 home runs. 22% strikeout and 75% contact. That's pretty good. But he ran that 218 BABIP. After the All-Star break, 47 games, 13 home runs, 23 extra base hits, 311, 407, 589 slash. Contact rate stayed steady. He was more selective. We saw the chase rate drop below 20%. That's substantial for a player like this. And he put up a 9th percentile exit velocity of 106 miles an hour. So it's legit power with Abimelec Ortiz. He had a 63% air rate, and he pulled 43% of his batted balls. That's a good recipe for power. I'm buying in on Abimelec Ortiz for 2025. I think it's a great buying opportunity, as do I with this guy, Pablo Guerrero. Now, Pablo Guerrero is popular because he's a son of Vlad Sr., brother of Vlad Jr. He wasn't really hyped in the international market when he signed in 2023. He got a $97K bonus. That's not a lot. Like, just know that that's a very low bonus, especially when you have that name pedigree. And in the DSL, it was kind of like, whatever. But 2024, as a young player, he spent time in the complex and single A and was really good. I mean, he just turned 18. He put up a 9th percentile of 106. That's off the charts power for his age. I mean, we talked about for Luis Merejo, Pablo Guerrero was younger and did that. That's wild. He pulled the ball 50% of the time at a 60% air rate. Good combo for success. The contact rates were actually respectable. They dipped a bit in single A, which is something that I'm wanting to see. But still, he had a 71% contact rate in 94 trips to the plate in single A, which is solid, and an 80% end zone. And for somebody that was 17 and 18 years old in full season ball, we'll take it. Yeah, he's aggressive. He chases some, but power good. First base only profile. I mean, these are good marks that you want to see, if we're being honest. So Pablo Guerrero is a potential breakout in 2025. A couple of college draftees to hit on before we get out of here. Cole Mathis, drafted out of College of Charleston, Chicago Cubs. Very interesting player. very good power. I'll be interested to see how it translates with Wood. His numbers in the Cape Cod League with Wood were kind of interesting. He had just a 100-mile-an-hour 9th percentile EV with Wood on the Cape. Small sample. But in the spring, it was 108 with Metal. So typically, we don't see that big of a drop-off. We'll see how it plays in 2025. But it's a really good contact, really good plate approach. Cole Mathis, name to know, and Blake Burke. Blake Burke came out of the University of Tennessee, drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers. Very underrated profile. Hit 20 home runs, 51 extra base hits in college, /379, 449, 702. Struck out 15% of the time. His exit velocities were off the charts, 95-mile-an-hour average and a 110 ninth percentile, topped at 117. Contact rates are pretty good, too, for this power profile. In college, he had an 88% in-zone contact rate, which is good, and an 84% overall mark. It's a line drive approach. Maybe he lifts a little more and gets to some more home run power, but Blake Burke seems kind of poised to take a big step forward, I think, and be much more well-known. A couple of DSL guys, and we'll wrap up here. Edward Florentino with the Pittsburgh Pirates and Justin Gonzales with the Boston Red Sox. Both guys did some pretty notable things in the DSL. I don't care about the stat line. I'm not going to read off the stat line, but know this. Both guys have a really good frames. Both are 6'4" at minimum. Gonzales might be up to like 6'6" at this point, if we're being honest. He's massive. The power was really good for both guys. Florentino ran a 103.5 mile-an-hour 9th percentile. He was 17. That number's also MLB average. Justin Gonzales ran a 104 mile-an-hour 9th percentile exit velocity. Both put up pretty respectable contact rates. Florentino's really good, 86% in zone, which was solid. That'll absolutely play. Justin Gonzales, 90% in zone. Obviously, we're talking DSL, so we need to see how this plays moving forward. But I will see the Red Sox and Pirates backfields pretty often in March, so we'll have a better read on these guys. But those are two prospects to know, Edward Florentino of the Pirates and Justin Gonzales of the Red Sox. I think that's going to do it. We're going to get out of here. That's been another edition of the Dynasty Dugout Show. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already on your favorite podcast app or here on YouTube. That would be great as well. And hope you all have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.